Today, we're going to be talking about some of the basic concepts of lighting. In this video, we're going to be covering 3 basic concepts that I think really need to be understood before we go any further into lighting. Personally, I think shaping lighting is one of the most important aspects of creating an interesting looking image. When we create any image, we are looking to convey certain emotions to our audience, and our lighting needs to be consistent with those emotions we are trying to convey to them. So there are different techniques we can use to create a different mood or a different atmosphere within our scene. There are a lot of beginners that think the best way to light a scene is to remove any shadows in that scene, and that's not necessarily what we want to do. We may want minimal shadows depending on what type of mood in our image we're going for, but eliminating the shadows altogether will make for a very flat image, and that's not necessarily what we want. We want to shape the lighting to create the emotion we are trying to convey in that scene. So the first concept we're going to cover is high key versus low key lighting. What are those? When I say high key lighting, I am describing the lighting in a particular scene and how it was used. So an example of a high key scene will usually have a little less contrast. It'll have minimal shadows. Usually they're using soft light, and the entire image will generally be brighter. We see high key lighting used in a lot of different types of narrative projects out there and other types of videos like corporate videos, commercials, romance videos, comedies, things like that, where you want the audience to feel a little more comfortable, a little happy, more lighthearted. That's sort of the mood and tone we're setting using that kind of lighting. Contrast to that, we have low-key lighting, and really you have everything in between. But low-key lighting is kind of the lighting I use for my videos. It's a little bit more contrast, generally a little bit darker of an image. Sometimes hard light is used. And those images, you will get a more dramatic feel, sometimes a more serious feel from those images. But to me, they're just way more interesting than high-key images, which is why I like using those for my videos. We see low-key lighting used in a lot of horror movies, action movies, thrillers, things like that. Think The Batman. That's all low-key lighting pretty much in that particular video. The second thing I want to cover is color temperature. All light has a certain temperature that is measured in degrees Kelvin. That is basically how warm or cool the light is. So a warmer light might be something like 2800 degrees Kelvin. That might be interior light bulbs that you would find in a typical American house, where sunlight is 5600 Kelvin in the middle of the day, and that's a little bit more of a cool light. The reason this is important is because we've got to be able to white balance our camera, and then you want to be able to create contrast in lights, or maybe not necessarily create contrast. You want to be able to understand that so that you can make your image look the way you want. So for example, I have a warmer light behind me here that is contrasted with my cooler light here, so it stands out a little bit, adds a little bit of contrast to the scene. But I have my lights above me in the room. I changed out those bulbs so that they're cooler to match my key light, so that my whole room around me, this whole scene, doesn't look really yellow or orange or anything like that when I want it to look correct. I want whites looking white and blacks looking black. You can use things like color cards and flags in order to white balance your camera at the point where the subject is before you start shooting. So the next concept we're going to cover is hard light versus soft light. Generally speaking, you can tell the difference between a hard light source and a soft light source based on how the shadows are behaving on your subject. So if you have a bright area and then a dark area and really no transition between the two, that's probably a hard light source. And if you have a very gradual transition from brighter area of your subject to a darker area of your subject, that is going to be a softer light source. Now, generally speaking, softer light sources are more pleasing and are used a lot when it comes to filmmaking. And there are a lot of techniques we can use to alter the light source and change the way the light is hitting our subject to create that soft light or hard light. So those are the basic concepts of lighting I think you need as a beginner filmmaker to understand to make your videos better. Thank you guys so much for watching this far. Leave me any comments or questions down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. God bless.